Hello fellow Hearts of the Blue, and welcome to my channel, and also welcome to Heavy Contrast Marines, a series where I try to paint a space marine to the highest level possible using just contrast paints and highlights. And what a very religion to start this new Traitor Marine series, given the actual war situation.
What the?
Than the Death God. So, let's get cracking. As you can see, we're starting from a base coat of Wraithbone spray. Be sure you get the Wraithbone into all the nooks and crannies. We are starting base coating the main color of the armor. This will be a 1-to-1 mix of Nas Direct Yellow and Militarum Green. Apply this over all the panels of the armor. As always with the contrast, you want to start and brush it in the direction you want the shadows to go, and do a fairly thick coat of this. You can always remove later on. Do section by section. And once you have a full section finished, go around and absorb any excess paint sitting where you don't want it. Watch out for all the undesired pulling that may happen. Our layer of Nas Direct Yellow and Militarum Green is now dry, and I'm going to start with the fun part. I'm going to take Fire Slayer Flesh and make a glaze out of it. I'm using just water here. You can use medium if you want. I'm going for very thin consistency. As you can see, you can almost not see it. And I'm going to glaze this in the lower part of each panel. Move your brush always in the direction you want the paint to go. In this case, from up to down. I'm also going to glaze this in the upper parts of the pits. Just like that. Again here, lower sections. I will let that dry and probably do a couple of layers until I have a very decent brown tone there. I will also drop this into the rivets. And do a recess shade with this where it's necessary, like for example here. Apply this there. Our glazes with Fire Slayer Flesh are done, and you can see how much that step has done to make our Death God look much more interesting. Now I'm going to do exactly the same, but in the opposite direction using Grit Camo. Again, I'm filling Grit Camo to a very thin consistency, and I will apply this in the exact opposite direction. That is, towards the upper parts of each panel. I'm making this a very subtle glaze. We don't want to go as intense as we did with Fire Slayer Flesh, but we do want that slight greenish tint that you can see starting to show up. And in addition to that, I also take in pure crit camo, no dilution, and I will place it around the rivets on the top parts, and I will also do small drips like that, randomly from the rivets. For example, here I will do one, but also from the top sections of the trim, like that. The glazing and dripping with grit camo is now done, and it's time to highlight all the armor. For this I'm just going to do a simple edge highlight using Ushapti bone. The highlight with the sharp tip on is now done. I'm going to move into the next highlight. This will be a Screaming Skull, and we will focus the Screaming Skull on the sharper corners and the tops of each highlight. For example, here on top of the knee, but pick up the bottom of each hole, because that's where the light will catch more. That will increase the 3D effect. Also pick the rivets. Our highlight with the Screaming Skull is now finished, and I'm going to do the last highlight on the armor. This is Spotted Witch Flesh, and I will just do small dots of this. I will pick the rivets and do dots where the joints and panels connect. Our highlight with Spotted Witch Flesh is now finished, and I'm going to clean up all the areas that will be done with other colors. First of all, I'm using Dawnstone to pick up all the areas that are going to be black. That is the back of this round symbol that they have here on the shoulder. But also the bolter casing. I'm going to also pick up all the skulls with Corax White. That also includes the skull here on the knee pad. Also with Corax White, pick up all the cloth, bandages, etc. That also includes the leather that holds the grenades in place. With the black areas base coated with Dunstan, I'm going to now do a layer of black temper all over them. Our layer of black temper is now dry, and I'm going to apply a layer of 2 parts skeleton horde and 1 part militarum green. This is 2 parts skeleton horde, 1 part militarum green. I'm applying this just on that panel on the armor, and I'm going to apply pure skeleton horde over all the decorative skulls. Our layers are mostly dry, and I'm going to highlight the knee pad using Greek khaki. Now I'm going to use palette wood flesh to highlight a bit more the knee pad. And now I'm going to highlight all the skull parts using pure white. Here on the knee pad, I'm just going to do small dots of white. Picking up the most prominent features. And on the skulls, I'm going to edge highlight all the parts. With the bone parts now finished, I'm going to concentrate into the flesh areas. For this, I'm using a mix of 3 parts dark oak flesh and 1 part volupus pink. Our layer of voluptuous pink and dark of flesh is now dry, and I've picked up all the boils on the skin parts and here on the armor with Corax White, and I'm going to layer them using Nast Direct Yellow. I'm now going to highlight all the skin using Kislev Flesh. For the next highlight on the skin, I'm going to use Flayed One Flesh. The highlights on the flesh are done for now. I'm going to highlight all the boils. For this I'm going to use Ushapti Bone. I'll just pick the top of each boil with Ushapti Bone. All the boils are now highlighted, and I'm going to add a bit more color into the flesh, especially into the tips of the tentacles, using a glaze of voluptuous pink. I have voluptuous pink mixed with medium to this sort of consistency, and I'm going to apply several layers of this over the very tips of the tentacles. I will let that dry and do as many layers as I need to get the overall effect how I want it. My glazing with voluptuous pink is done, and I'm going to do another highlight on those very pink parts using Flayed One Flesh. We want this sort of consistency, so quite transparent but not a glaze, and I'm going to do a very thin line. Running across the tentacle. Just like that. Pick all the ridges of the tentacles if they have it. Now I'm going to do a final highlight all over all the skin using palette witch flesh. Here in the tip of the in the tentacles, in the pink part, I'm just going to do some dots of this. Like so. And the rest of the skin just highlighted as usual, just one more step. I will also do a very small dot of this in the top of each boil. With all the flesh bits now done, I'm going to move into all the straps and the leather on the grenades. For this I'm going to use Volupus Pink. Just do a layer of Volupus Pink all over all those parts. My layer of Volupus Pink is dry and I'm going to do another one. This time I'm using a mix of 1 part Volupus Pink, 1 part Black Templar and 1 part Contrast Medium. And I'm going to move into highlighting all the dark pink straps. For this, I'm going to start with Pink Horror. I'm just going to do an edge highlight on all the strapping. Our highlight of Pink Horror is now done and I'm going to do another highlight, this time using Cadian Fleshstone. Again, I will just pick the edges of these straps, but taking less area than before. And finally I'm going to use Kislev Flesh to do small dots all across the highest points of the strapping. Our highlights on the dark pink cloth parts are finished. Remember, we also did like that the leather straps holding all the grenades. I just want to point out that I changed my mind about a couple of things. First of all, I now want my rigging on the armor joints to be black instead of metallic. That was the original idea, so I just painted those the same way as the rest of the black parts. I also forgot to do in flesh those tubes that are in there, and I originally painted this to be yellow, but I didn't like it. It was lost among all the yellowness of the armor, so I just did pink as the rest of the flesh. So with that out of the way, I'm going to now highlight all the black details. This I'm going to use Downstone. Just edge highlight with Downstone all the metallic, all the black parts. The highlight of downstone is finished and I'm going to do another one using mini stratum grey. Again, this will be exactly the same, just taking less area on each edge. Focus it, of course, towards all the corners. The highlight with administratum grey is now done. I'm going to do the final highlight on the black part. This is with one grey. Then we'll just do some dots of this in all the corners of all the black parts. Here on the region, I will just do a dot of this right in the center of each of the administration grey highlights. Our black parts are done and I'm going to move into base coating all the metal details. For this I'm going to use two colors. All the steel will be base coated in lead belcher. This includes the tubes and of course the casing on the bolter, etc. And I will base coat all the trim and decorative parts using Balthasar Gold. With the base coat on our metallic packs now finally done, and those took quite a while, I'm now going to shade them both at the same time. For this I'm using a mix of 1 part wildwood and 4 parts contrast medium. And apply this over both of the metallics. As always, be very careful with all the areas we previously base coated and painted. You don't want to mess everything up now. And just apply this over all the metallics like a wash. With the wash on all of our metal details now done, I'm going to start with the star symbol here on his banner, because this will be a different shade from the rest of the copper, and I'm going to highlight it using Sycorax bronze. I will also be quite heavy with this, almost layering it. Our layer of Sycorax bronze is now dry, and I'm going to highlight the rest of the copper trim using fulgurite copper. Just go around, edge highlighting every detail of the trim with fulgurite copper. With that step done, it's time to apply the last highlight on all the metallics. That includes the steel, copper and bronze. For this I'm going to do an edge highlight of Stonehold Silver. In the copper parts, I will just apply it very cautiously, just in the very tips and highest highlights. But I will go full edge highlight on the bronze and the steel. On some of the steel parts, I will also try to add a bit of weathering by doing some scratches, like for example here. All the highlights on our metal is done, and now it's time to tackle a very fun part for me, that is weathering. For this I'm going to use Exotic Green, thin it down to a glaze consistency, as you can see there. And then just going to load my brush quite a lot and put this into some of the rivets, like so. Also apply this on the bronze star, here on the top. Our weathering with Exotic Green is done, and I'm going to do the next step. This is the same step, but using tempered dark blue. What we will do is do exactly the same, but trying to cover a smaller area towards the inside. Just like that. And now we'll do just one more step. This is Bahar of Blue. Again, thin down a lot. And I will apply this Bahar of Blue just in the most prominent areas where more verdigris is gathered. Again, reducing this area and placing it on the inside. With the weathering on our metals done, I'm now going to layer this wooden area on the bolter using wildwood. This was, as I think I mentioned previously, knitting up with Corax White beforehand. While that wildwood dries, I'm going to layer Fleshtear's Red over this tube down here, and both of the lenses, ones on the banner and the ones on the marine himself. I'm just going to take Shakti Bone and do a quick edge highlight on the wooden parts. Once you finish the highlight with Shakti Bone, I'm just going to take some palette witch flesh and just pick up the very corners. With the wood finish, I'm going to highlight all the red details. For this I'm going to start using Wild Rider Red, and on the cable you can just do a very thin line. And for the lenses, I will just highlight the bottom parts with this. I'm now going to do a second highlight on the red cables. This is looking at orange, and I will just do a very thin line of this on the cable. I'm going to try and pick the very bottom. Just like so. And to finish off the lenses, I'm going to do a small dot of white just here and here. And now it's time to do the last detail, that is this yellow cable. For this I'm going to just do a layer of Nasdaq yellow all over it. I'm now going to do the red stripes on the cable. For this I'm using black Templar. And I will just apply this. Like so. I will do 2 coats of this to get the full black that we're looking for. Black stripes are now done, and you can see here I made a big mistake, but it's not that important. I will try to hide it with the highlights. So I'm now going to highlight all the cable black and yellow using a very thin line of pallet wood flesh. So this is the sort of consistency I'm going for, very thin. And you need to try and do the thinnest line you can. And here where the mistake is, I will just place the highlight there, make it a bit stronger. And just drop in more pallet wood flesh there, and that mistake is hidden. And with that last step done and the base painted, our heavy contrast death guard is done. I'm really happy with this. It was a good fun to paint, and I think it shows really well why contrast paints can be really amazing. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye! Do you want to decide when I paint in the channel or want direct feedback from me? Then consider Patreon. You have the link to my Patreon in the description below. Patreon helps me do all the cool projects that I want to make and helps me improve the quality of my videos. Don't be afraid, no content will ever be hidden behind a paywall, but it's a nice way to help me and you will get something back for your generosity. As I say guys, thank you very much for watching, and a special thank you to Kevin Suller, Skid Leonard, Leonard Lindemann, Victor Domen, ILJN, Jonathan Ekelund, Kieran O'Morthile, Michael Boyer, Richard Martin, Oliver James Bagwell for being the coolest persons in the planet. Be like these fine folks, join my Patreon and take control.